Thank you, Josie. Thank you. Awesome. Wow. Well, it's great to be here. It's great to be here. I was just thinking, was it a strategic decision to put a session that talks about burgers right before lunch? Maybe, maybe not. Wasn't my call, but I'm happy to be here anyway. So let's get to it. This is my first inbound, and I've been here for maybe 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and it's been quite an interesting experience already. Much, much larger than I ever imagined. Very excited to digging into this topic. As Josie said, I do have a specialty in the content area. I've had an agency for 14, 15 years, started as an SEO, and actually SEO and public relations. And the intersection, the natural intersection of SEO and public relations is actually content, creating content for journalists, creating content to attract journalists as well as buyers. Anyway, let's dig in to our fun metaphor. Obviously, we've all heard this phrase, and I'm sure you would imagine I am a big advocate that content is king, since I'm in the business of creating content for companies so they can acquire customers. But content isn't king, it's the kingdom, because it's what makes the whole damn thing work, right? Content is the reason search exists. Content is a byproduct of social sharing, right? All communications are essentially content. And it's really important to understand that in context when it comes to creating information to reach your business goals, whether it's to acquire customers, build thought leadership, recruit candidates, provide easy to access customer service information through digital channels. People create content for all kinds of reasons, not just to attract customers to transact. So while, whether you say content is king or the king or whatever, there's a lot to be said, a lot of advocacy around the notion of content going on, but it can be very overwhelming. And I don't know if any of you guys can relate to this, but all the way from, hey, we need more blog posts, to, hey, we need a brand new content plan, and we need a persona, a flushed out persona or 2 or 3 for 9 different customer segments, intersected with a matrix of 4 different stages in the buying cycle. Or something like that. I don't know how many people work for enterprise-size organizations, but you hear that stuff and you're like, are you out of your mind, right? It's just me. Or like Ann would say, I'm not a magician, I'm a marketer, whatever. Oh, and could you do that for each region? Because of course, global organization has lots of regional offices, divisions, and whatnot. So it can be very overwhelming. And the data proves it out. CMI and marketing profs do a study every year, B2B, B2C. Over 50% of marketers say they're challenged to create enough content. They also say it's a challenge to create a variety of engaging content. And according to last year's survey, another top issue was finding the right talent to create that content. So this all kind of leads up to an opportunity. And as we sink into understanding, well, what's possible? What kinds of things can we do to be more efficient and be more effective with content? And by the way, that URL over there is it's a link to a blog post, but that blog post then links to 30 in-depth articles that talk about pros, cons, best practices, tips, and examples for each of roughly 30 different content marketing tactics. It's like a book all on its own, FYI. Anyway, so folks are looking for some signal in all the noise about what you're supposed to do and how we can be more effective and efficient. And of course, one of the big solutions is this notion of repurposing, right? So we make a thing, it's just so hard to come up with brand new evergreen content, every day. What if we just, made it a little bit different? Or all these different models, like you've got Jay Bear, who's a magician when it comes to turning his little Jay Today podcast into 8 different types of content. So he's like dissecting it and making it up into different things. There's even a ebook that Compose did a case study on that they turned into 122 assets off of one ebook. There's something to be said for efficiency. When you're making really great content, really great useful information, to cut it up, dice it up, find new uses for it. But, you know, I look at that, and I've been a content repurposer for a long time. We have a marketing team of roughly 2, and that only happened about 4 months ago. So I went 14 years with basically no marketer. I was the marketer for our company, and I had written 1.3 or 1.4 million words on our blog over the last 10 years. And I don't know if any of you guys have blogged for that long or if you've written that many words. It takes a little bit of effort, and you'd wonder whether you might run out. So repurposing becomes something out of necessity. Anyway, Rick. Let's talk about Rick. Let's imagine this is a fantastic piece of content here. And luckily, Rick is wearing a burger hat, to my joy and excitement, considering the subject matter, the metaphor for this presentation. So let's say this is a great piece of content. What a lot of folks are doing is they're just kind of slightly, you know, making modifications, but essentially publishing duplicates of the thing that already exists. In fact, you'll see a little bit of dialogue in the marketing blogs and media about, hey, you know what, if you publish something a while ago, if you go back in your web analytics and you go see what your most popular posts were for the last year, for the last 2 years, the last 3 years, and you can modify them a little bit to still be evergreen, why wouldn't you republish them? And I do agree with that. But it's not a cornerstone for your content marketing. But that is what a lot of folks are doing. Other folks are repackaging this great content. Like a video. I might have a video, and I might take that video and transcribe it and turn it into a blog post, for example. Or I might cut that video up into small segments and use them as appetizers to a piece of gated content, and so on and so forth. I might take screenshots of the video and use those as assets for blog posts and other types of fulfillment assets as part of my marketing automation program. So folks are doing that too, but who's modifying the content enough so that it's actually relevant to what the customer wants, right? Most repurposing, and this is the thing, most repurposing is for the convenience of the marketer, to make it easy for them to say, hey, I started with one thing and now I have 10. I now have 10 handfuls of spaghetti to throw against the wall to see what sticks, instead of just one. But how much more effective would it be if we actually kept our repurposed specifically with customers in mind? So it's important that we find the balance between efficiency and what it is that customers actually want. And I'd like to say, why can't we have both? Why can't we have both? We should demand both. The ability to be efficient in our content creation and repurposing, and at the same time, be making content that's meaningful to the audience it's intended for, meaningful for the brand and its ability to inspire those customers to take action, whatever it is that we want them to do. So yes, we can have both through a very customer-focused approach to modular content. I don't know if anyone's heard of modular content before, but I'm borrowing the phrase from somebody else. It's bounced around a lot. It's used in marketing automation where people create templates and intelligent content. They use databases to push formulaic information through those templates to create information, so you can have 1,000 variations of emails in a marketing automation program as opposed to manually doing them. Well, I'm talking about modular content a little bit differently, but the idea is so we can create information that's both relevant to humans and efficient for us marketers who are taxed with having to wear 5 hats and achieve much better performance this year than we did last year, right? So my definition is that it's the planning, creation, and repurposing of component pieces of information and media organized by types of content, keywords, topics, and even what the customer focus would be for that type of content. So as an example, so one of the things I get to play around with a lot are event eBooks. I'm not saying you should create eBooks. It's a very large asset, a marketing asset that's very amenable to repurposing, right? It's a story. You have a beginning, middle, and the end. You have different contributors. You can have so many different types of information in an ebook. It can be very effective. So Event-specific ebooks is a thing that I've been, like I said, I've been playing with. Here's 13 of them that I've done, or that we've done, excuse me. And out of those 13 ebooks, we worked with 262 contributors, well, actually 200. 62 contributed to more than one. So it wasn't just us. And then those ebooks have received 870,000 views on SlideShare alone, well over 1 million views. The cost to produce these ebooks was virtually nothing. In fact, we've been paid to do several of them, and we've repurposed them many, 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 many different ways. And I'm going to share with you a little bit how. Okay? So the schema for fundamental repurposing with intention of being customer relevant is to start with insight about your customer, like why do people buy from me, or what are their pain points, that sort of thing. And we translate the answers to those questions into themes or keywords or topics, or whatever you want to call them. So essentially, you want to be the best answer for what it is that your customer is looking for. That's what inbound's all about, right? So you create themed content. So if you want to be the best answer for that thing that customers care about most, you create and collect and curate content relevant to that theme. And then you can assemble it into large assets like ebooks or white papers or articles, repositories of resource information on your website, what have you. And then you can repurpose it or create tangential content like blog posts and infographics and so forth. And then you could deconstruct it into micro content. A lot of times this happens when someone publishes a blog post or an ebook and they create like 15 different social messages that are versions of what's in that large asset. So that's the schema. I hope this is familiar to most people in here, right? We create things and then we break them down and we promote, right? So when it comes to event content or any kind of content, I'm going to use an ebook here as an example, but you could apply this to a blog post or anything. Essentially, we start with those. In this case, we started with themed tips. So in this case, we worked with other folks and we used keywords in the questions, basically. What keywords do we want to attract new business with? What keywords or topics do we want to be known for that we know our customers are looking for? Our customers care about these words, about these ideas. And so we asked other people to help us create information around those ideas and then translated what they provided us into an ebook and into blog posts and into an infographic, and in parts of it was incorporated into a newsletter and guest posts on other people's blogs and articles in industry publications quoting the people who contributed, as well as our own, and guides and checklists that are used in lead nurturing. Right? People sign up, you start to send them emails, or to get them to sign up, you offer a guide to whatever, or a checklist, or a worksheet, and so forth, and even in presentations like this. Now here's the thing, this is all supported. Each one of these is like a hub with spokes. The hub is the destination. We want people, humans, to visit the destination. And the spokes are amplification or distribution channels like email broadcast or ads or SEO, I suppose, people coming in through organic search, but definitely social channels where there's a community that we can push information out to. And they're coming into the hub. They interact with information at the hub, and our calls to action allow them to opt in, where we can give them other versions of that repurposed content. So it all follows a very similar theme. Does that make sense? And of course, we're keeping keywords in mind, and we are cross-linking between these assets, because when you have similar but not the same content on the web, and you have third parties linking into those assets, those destinations, and they link between each other, you're creating a very nice, easy to understand picture for Google. And the outcome of that often is very favorable appearance in the search results. So further to explain this, I guess, is I'm going to use the metaphor. We've got our original content, which might be a burger. And of course, what a lot of people are doing is they're just making a different version of that. And okay, I got 3 things. When I started with 1, I'm done. I don't think so. We have to think about the ingredients. So this is what you do. Instead of going, okay, I'm going to create a blog post or a video, an infographic or an ebook, and then I'm going to create a slightly different version of it. Think of the stuff that goes into creating it in the first place as ingredients. And get in the habit of collecting your source content and organizing it in spreadsheets or whatever you use as ingredients. Create a sort of taxonomy of, okay, we're doing an ebook about topic X. So we have information about topic X. We have internal subject matter experts, we've got influencers, we've got different sources of information about that topic. Let's record those facts, those quotes, those tips, those case studies, those examples, even statistics into that spreadsheet. When you do that and you think of it as ingredients, it makes it a lot easier to create all sorts of variations that are relevant to your different customer segments or your different target audiences. Right? Does that make sense? So instead of just making copies of the stuff you're already producing, think of what goes into it in the first place. Each piece of content is a recipe. Right? If you really think about it, it's a recipe. And start working with those ingredients. So what kind of content burger would your customers want, right? Think about, and you get data, you have web analytics, social media monitoring, you have influencer tracking, there's all kinds of data inputs that you can use to identify what kind of content, what kind of media, what channels would be most relevant for your target audience. And look at like I said, look at those as ingredients. Once you find out, and you may have a very fuzzy hypothesis to start, that's okay. I mean, a lot of people in a marketing function operate off of their gut anyway. It's like the vast majority of people don't even have a documented strategy, content strategy, let alone function that way. So you can collect these things, especially facts, anything factual that's relevant to the theme that you want to be known for and to customers. So how do we plan this out? It starts with understanding who your customer is and what their pain points are, what their goals are, okay? And not the lineup as a way to identify your target market. I feel like some people do that, I don't know. And if you understand the customer journey, what is that journey like? It's not linear. Rarely is it ever linear, and only for very low-cost commoditized products would somebody ever just go like, I have a problem. Oh, quick, I got to go to Google. Oh, bam, I bought, I transacted, I'm done. That's a small slice of the world. So a lot of people, especially in B2B, there's longer sales cycles. They're doing a lot of research. They're engaging with different types of media and content to answer questions. Right? Answering questions at different stages of their journey from going from being aware of a problem to looking at optional solutions, getting to the point of comparison, and ultimately making a choice and transacting, right? These are all important things to think about. And the model that we like, or that I like to use in understanding customers as it relates to information and content, since content makes the marketing world go round, is this notion of discover, consume, and act. So basically that just means, how is it that our customers, our buyers, are they discovering information? So you do this already. What organic keywords do they search on? All right. What social networks do they spend time on? Who are they influenced by? Where do they subscribe? What shows do they watch? And you can get really deep on this, and you can create a profile that can augment. If you're working with personas to inspire your content creation, great. If you're not, and you just need to collect some data and cluster it and organize it, that's fine too. But get some insight into how they prefer to discover information. The other thing is, how do they prefer to consume? Are they consuming on tablets and mobile? Obviously, increasingly mobile. If you're not mobile, you're crazy, because, I mean, you got things like Google says, his handle is John Moo, said if you have just a mobile site and that's it, you'll do just fine in desktop search results, as well as mobile search results. That's pretty interesting. But how do they prefer to consume, and what do they prefer to consume? Is it video? Is it images? Is it text? Is it audio? Do people really listen to that many podcasts? Figure it out so you can give it to them. And then action basically has to do with what types of offers will motivate them to the next stage in their buying experience, right? What signals of credibility can you create, right, to move them from wherever it is that they are right now to the next step, right? The action, you always want to be answering 3 key questions with your content. One, obviously, what is it relevant to the customer? And the second thing is, well, how does this solve a problem for the customer of some kind? And you're not trying to sell people on every single piece of content, of course not. But it should solve some kind of information problem to move them to the next step. And that's the third thing. Always make it clear what they can do next, right? Always make it clear what they can do next. So what is it? How does it solve a problem for them? And what do they do next? So many people creating content today don't do that third thing. Or they focus too much like a landing page and want them to buy when it's not time yet. So one of the key components of setting up a meaningful modular repurposing initiative is to have a clear idea, or at least an active pursuit of the idea of what it is that your customers want. And for you then to architect a scenario where you're creating signals of credibility wherever they might run into, whether they read a magazine, or they look at a blog, or whether they do a search, or whether they look at our social network. They keep seeing you. And that adds up to the perfect inbound sort of situation. So ultimately, as I like to say, you want to become the best answer wherever it is that your customers are looking. Yes, that's very tweetable. So the rubric, or the scheme, listen to me. The questions that you want to answer in terms of understanding your customers are, one, obviously, what are the core concepts important to their buyer journey, right? And then actively create and curate from others answers to those questions. That's a way for you to scale. Hey, I'm just one person in a marketing department. I've got to do all these things. Great. Curate. Create stuff on your own. Co-create with others. And absolutely curate internally and externally as well. And then use content snippets as ingredients for your content repurposing, right? It's the whole ingredient model. So once we understand how buyers prefer to discover, consume, and act on information, like what's going to work with them, then we employ a content accountability model called Attract, Engage, Convert. And that basically means any kind of content we create or repurpose or whatever has to be accountable in its ability to attract the right audience, to engage them in a meaningful way, and to convert them. And convert really means take action, not just filling out a form, but taking some kind of action, whether it's a social share or recommending you to somebody else. And as you gather that insight, then you can include, and this is very simplified obviously, but you can answer those three questions for each customer segment, and that's where you can apply meaningful repurposing using this sort of approach, right? What is it? How do I solve that problem? What are my next steps specific to that particular buyer segment, right? You answer these questions specifically to the different buyer segments that you have. And it's important from an input standpoint, like where do I get this information to repurpose? Where do I get the ingredients from? And I found a couple of different types of content to be very, very amenable to this sort of ingredient model. And by the way, this is just a layer to the content. This is just a slice of what you do. You keep doing what you're already doing. You add this as a way to get you more efficient and meaningful. So stats, quotes, tips, case studies, any facts, right? Anything like that are very, very useful and portable, if you will, for repurposing and reconstruction. And I'm a big advocate of using other people, not just your internal people, people outside your organization or even your community, to provide those things. You can also look on the web. You could do your own research and collect these kinds of things to fuel your repurposing effort. So as you understand what it is that we stand for as a brand and what is it that our customers want to solve for, we translate that insight into keywords, themes, the stories we want to tell in our marketing, and we pick target topics, we pick amplification channels like social networks, we pick the keywords we're going to optimize for, and we can use those in a template. So you can create a template for repurposing, is what I'm saying. And we pick different sections to include repurposed information. So I might have one section that's the brand position, that's all evergreen, original for that particular situation, but then I draw from my recipe box, or my ingredient list, excuse me, the other component parts that come from influencers or internal subject matter experts or whoever, right? And that also applies to how you extend content distribution by cross-posting and to other channels that you might own, or guest blog posts, or one thing that's extremely effective is contributed articles to industry publications. So what secret burger, yeah, well, I blew that, didn't I? What secret burger ingredient can make your content pop? It's bacon, of course. I mean, bacon, right? AKA, to me, influencers, right? Influencers are what can really make your content pop, not only from a quality standpoint, but from a distribution standpoint. Because if you've found the right influencer and you've inspired them to contribute in a real meaningful way, that's also going to inspire them to help you promote the thing that they contributed to. And the numbers don't lie. This is amazing stats here from Thomason. For every dollar people put into influencer marketing, they're making 6.5 back, or up to 20 for even smaller number of folks that are even more successful with this. That's a very, very compelling stat on why you'd want to use influencers. Of course, you could also use Ann Handley. I don't know if anybody here saw Ann Handley, the previous presentation, but I use Ann Handley this way all the time. Ann and I have been friends for a really, really long time. She's an amazing person, very, very smart, very good person. And we've co-created, or we've tapped Ann as an influencer many, many, many different times in different projects, and they're always successful. So clearly Ann is just as effective as bacon. You can tweet that if you want. And so once you identify influencers, and we've wrote a lot about that. Case studies and the whole shebang at marketingblog.com. That's our blog, marketingblog.com. Not too hard to find about influencers and content and that sort of thing. But once you find influencers, then you can use your formula, your templates, right, to start playing around with what's going to work with this particular target audience, with this particular type of content, okay? And of course, if you're using those influencers, hopefully it'll help your content go pop. One little tip about influencers. You do want to send them pre-written tweets and social shares, and you want them to all share at the same time when the thing publishes. That is going to make the popcorn out of the pop. We've been testing this for a long time in series. You send them messages the night before, the day before, because they're using Buffer to queue up their social shares for the next day like everybody else, and you give them pre-written social shares, and you let them know when the thing that they contributed to is going to drop or when it's going to publish, and you let them know that. And if they all share, or a lot of people share at the same time, social networks especially, that can have a favorable outcome for you versus some random sharing that occurs over a day or two after the thing that you published goes live. So some content repurposing tips. The most common is big to small, right? Taking something awesome that you created and deconstructing it. So we did and I'm using eBooks in this case, but again, we don't just do eBooks, and neither should you. We do all kinds of different content. But we did one for Social Media Marketing World as a conference. So the top level theme was, of course, social media marketing. And the subtopics were platforms and things like the word tips or how to. And then the repurposing in this particular case was mostly just from the ebook, social shares and that sort of thing as you do, but also the blog posts. And then again, anything that you output is a hub, and the spokes are social channels for distribution. And so people answered a variety of questions in this broad book about social media marketing. But within that book, 5 people answered specifically tips on LinkedIn. So we pulled just those people out, and we did a blog post, and we did some other content just about LinkedIn. Does that make sense? So think about it. We did that was on purpose. That was on purpose, right? We knew the overall goal was about social media marketing, but we asked specific people about specific questions, knowing that we were going to repurpose it later. And that's where a lot of your efficiency and meaningfulness is going to come from. Okay, another is small to big, right? So this is where we're really being thoughtful about our ingredients, our content ingredients. We're really being thoughtful about what micro content, what facts, what stats, what quotes, tips, case studies, and examples, any of those things can I collect. Now, as you are probably an active digital citizen consuming content out on the web, I highly encourage you to use something like Evernote or any bookmarking tool. So as you read articles and you find things, as you create things, start curating this stuff and tag it. right? Tag, meaning add keywords to it so that you can look later and go, I'm doing an article about this. Man, it sure would be nice to have 5 examples. Bam! You've got 150 of them because slowly but surely you and your team have been adding links and information to a Google Doc or Evernote or something, right? A little bit from a lot of people makes this work awesome. So you collect these little pieces of information, you create something bigger. From a curation standpoint, there's a couple of tools I really like. I don't know if Steve's in here or not from BuzzSumo, but BuzzSumo is absolutely one of my favorite, and they've really exploded in popularity over the last year, and for good reason. Also, Viral News Chart is kind of an interesting, similar type tool. Well, I shouldn't even say similar. It's just news curation. It doesn't do all the other stuff that BuzzSumo does, but you can use it for free, and you can use multiple sources as well as Google News to find things that you can curate, and then you can assemble them. So one of the things that we do to make efficient and effective and meaningful our news content is we are curating on the social web, and we're publishing that to our social channels, as everyone does here, I'm sure. You share things to Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook and whatever. Yeah? Okay, great. But then we harvest those things and we bring them into a Friday news post. It's so easy for Ben to do these news posts because all the stuff has been curated throughout the week. By the time Friday comes, actually he's done with these on Thursday. It's a reliable, it's a very consistent thing that happens. It's an easy content asset to create, and people look forward to it, right? They look forward to it. So it's easy to do because we've already curated the news stories and we publish it as a blog post. And then the other thing is we draw upon the most popular things and we include those in the monthly newsletter, right? So this is a schema. I mean, maybe you'll do this exactly, but do you see how that works? We collect little things, we make them into bigger things, and we find the best of that, and we turn it into yet something else. All guided by a topic or a theme relevant to our customers. So there's a lot of, advice I could give you about small to big, and a lot of tips, or a lot of things you could do, I suppose. And the world is your oyster in terms of creativity, as far as how can I look at the digital world and component parts and as ingredients, and how might I assemble them in a really useful way, whether it's my content or someone else's, that could satisfy some need of my target audience. That will make it easier for you to create meaningful and repurpose meaningful content. Okay? Taking photos, and I go to the next slide. So here's an example of a website that sells Catholic products, I guess I don't know how else to say it. They sell Catholic products, right? Bibles and all kinds of things. Anyway, so they were not going to go, they had a content management system that was very difficult to change and modify. Any of you who are in the SEO game know how wonderful that is when you're trying to optimize a site. So often you create a blog or you do something else. And in this case, they were actively blogging, and they were active in the social web, and they were actually able to curate or pull in content from their community and past blog posts to actually, and repurpose all that into a shopping guide. So instead of, they have a catalog, but then as they have the key reasons and situations why their customers buy, they actually created almost like a lookbook. So it was more experiential, and it gave examples, and it gave stories, if you will, and curated them all together. They didn't create anything original for this, and this had a big boost in their sales during the holiday season. So that's another example of small to big. The 4th out of 5, exploding interviews. I love doing this, and again, I do a lot of influencer marketing work, but who's influential? You're influential. We're all influential about something. Think about that. So if you interview people, because they have subject matter expertise to share, the structure of the questions, if I publish an interview with, give somebody 10 questions and I publish it, yay, that's great. If famous person, yeah, that's fantastic. But and when I ask the questions, a lot of the questions I'm asking keywords and topics. I'm actually asking some questions meant to inspire a very tactical answer. So when I publish the interview on the first go, it has a certain impact. But I'm going to do a series, right? Serialize things that you're doing too, folks. Don't just do something once. Pick pick it like a contest or a promotion or list, like do it over and over again. Anyway, so do a series of interviews, and so asking everybody 10 questions. 4 of the questions are the exact same for everybody. The rest are personalized. Of the 4 questions that are exactly the same, after the sequence of 10 interviews publishes, and we've got all kinds of attention, we can go ahead and publish all the answers to question 4. Because they're all tactical tips. They're very practical, actionable things. And they're questions, it's information being provided by an industry expert answering a question that your customers, your prospects need answered in order to buy from someone like you. So I don't know if that makes sense. This is a way to do a couple of things. One, it is a way to repurpose the content in interviews in a very intentional way, creating really useful resources even though they're repurposed. And it's okay, they've never existed before, so Google's going to be just fine with that collection of all the answers to question 4 or 5 or 6. The other thing is that it gives you a great opportunity to create a relationship with those influencers and repurpose it in lots of other ways. So I might publish the interviews and then do all the answers to the tactical questions, and then I might take some that did the best and actually put it into an ebook and pop it up on SlideShare if it's a B2B sort of scenario. Does that make sense, right? And there's all kinds of things you can do in that way, but it's pretty fun. Thought leadership. So here, if you want to differentiate yourself in your market, thought leadership is very, very important. In other words, people need to think of you as that best answer, not just tactically and functionally when they look for answers, but when they think, gosh, whenever I think of red widgets, man, I think of you, right? And that thought leadership means you need to be demonstrating, innovation and authority in the content you're producing. So here's a way to shortcut that a little bit. First, you have to identify a key trend in your industry that's going to be really important to your customers. And then connect with industry influencers who are already authoritative for those things and ask them for an insight, a prediction. I'm actually doing a project like this right now. And because I've been doing this for a long time, my network is very robust. I have 40, 45 people that are at the director, VP, or CMO level, Fortune 500 companies that have answered this one question prediction. Right? That's a very powerful group of people to be able to work with, and you can do the same thing. So you ask them for an insight or a prediction, because these are things very much aligned with the notion of thought leadership, because people are looking forward, they want to know what's coming up next, and then add your own insights, right? That's where you get to get mixed in the recipe, and by association, it boosts your thought leadership as well. And then publish. Publish the answers they give you, intermingled with your own answers, whether it's an ebook, a blog post, or even a guide for fulfillment as part of your marketing automation. And then repurpose it, right? Use the things that they said when you contribute articles to industry publications or contribute blog posts to other industry blogs. Yeah? Because there's always going to be a link back to the hub, back to the thing you published in the first place. And then extend the relationship you've established with that person by saying, hey, because hopefully everyone's prediction, along with your own, published on your site and then repurposed on other media sites has been a fantastic success for you and given them wonderful exposure. And your follow-up to extend the relationship with the influencers to say, that was fantastic, yay for all of us, we'd love to do an in-depth interview with you. And in most cases, they're like, yeah, I want more of that. And then you can do that 10 interviews for question number 4 thing. Does that make sense? It's a cycle. You're constantly trying to optimize your ability to be efficient and meaningful. So where does this fit in the content marketing maturity model? What I mean by that is that people fall at different stages in terms of creating content for the purpose of marketing. And a lot of folks start out in stasis. I mean, they only make it when they have to. We have to launch a press release. We have to launch a product, so we're going to send out a press release. Oh, I have to do one blog post a month, that kind of thing. Hopefully nobody in here is in that situation. Folks move into production where we're making more content, very SEO driven. The more hooks in the water we have, the more organic or referred traffic we can get. We're creating a lot more content than we were. Utility is a little more meaningful. That's where we're like, okay, what do people need to know? What useful resources could we create for our community and our audience, right? And solve some of their questions and kind of create some affinity because we're being so useful to them, it leads them to the idea that we're someone they want to do business with. All the way to storytelling, which is thinking more about experience, content as experience, to monetization where, as Jay Baer would say, your content or your marketing is so good people are willing to pay for it. And I'm happy to say some of the stuff we do is in that category. Someone else pays us to create content that gives us leads and new business, but we didn't pay for any of it. Crazy. Anyway, repurposing usually starts in the production phase where it's more about just being efficient. And then it gets into effectiveness and being more thoughtful about the actual audience. And that's a lot of what I'm talking about today. And as you move into storytelling, it's more focused on the notion of how can we repurpose content as part of an experience, creating a better experience for our community, for our customers. Okay, all kinds of things, I know. And you're ready for lunch. I hope they have burgers today. That would be so ironic. So, first thing you've got to do is, as far as takeaway, thing to do is customer insight. You've got to tap into customer insight so that you understand what triggers that you can use for creation and curation, the assembly of those ingredients, right? And get imaginative, right? As a digital citizen and your use, your discovery and consumption and interaction with content yourself, hopefully you are curating already. Get really creative about thinking of content through the lens of ingredient, right? Doesn't apply to everything, but in some situations it really applies, especially when it deals with factual information, micro content, very nuggetizable content. And then the last thing is add the bacon. Add influencers to your mix. And don't make all the mistakes that so many people make with influencers. We actually have a post. If you go to marketingblog.com, look about 5 or 6 posts ago, we actually have a list of 50 ways to fail at influencer engagement. Just don't do those things and you'll be just great when working with influencers. But influencers can definitely add the pop to your content. So my call to action is we're hiring. We're hiring. We've got lots of customers. We're hiring. That's the number one thing for Top Rank. So if you want to move to Minneapolis or if you live there and you're a pretty savvy person, you want to learn a lot of stuff, work with some pretty awesome clients, well, please contact me. Especially SEOs, content marketing people, and account management people. And there's a freebie. This is not gated. It's a PDF. This is an optimized workflow at that URL, tprk.us/ozwflow. And it identifies all the different steps from content planning, auditing, implementation, amplification, and performance. So this is an integrated workflow taking into account content, SEO, social, and influencers. Feel free to share this if you want. It's fine with me. But it's a really this makes sense for me. Anyway, that's a nice freebie. For you. Again, it's ungated, so you can just download the PDF and have fun with it. So, there we go. Do we have any time for questions? Okay, 5 minutes? Okay. Any questions? Other than what's for lunch? Oh, there's a microphone right here if it's okay. Get some of your steps in.
Go. Thank you. That was a great presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
Lots of stuff to work with. On one of the slides, you had shown the bacon, pork, and ham, and like the name and all that. Am I under the right understanding that you might later then sort by one of those columns in order to see if you have enough to generate more content?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So the idea is that as you curate and as you create yourself, like if I create a blog post, I'm going to look, or I'll have someone help me, look for quotes. Just they'll pull quotes right out of there. Or if we've included stats or anything nuggetized like that, and we'll pull that into a separate spreadsheet document and we'll tag it for future use. Yeah, and then the application is exactly what you just said. Then we can sort by keyword or by source or by type to find what we need later on. Awesome.
Hi, my name is Hanson Hunt.
I like your beard. It's awesome. You know,
Thank
there's
you,
a
Lee.
Marketers with Beards Facebook group. You should really check it out.
Really?
Yes.
Maybe I should start my own.
Okay.
I really liked your analogy with the ingredients in the burger, but it seems with, especially my company has a small amount of content compared to probably your company, you probably have millions of bits of ingredients that are possible to be used for larger marketing organizations. How do you catalog that? It can't possibly just be in Excel. How are you organizing these ingredients?
Right now it is, and we are talking to a couple of CRM, or not CRM, content management platform and other SaaS, marketing SaaS vendors about adding this kind of functionality to their platforms. But right now, yeah, I'm using Google Docs. It's sad, but that's what I'm using.
Great, thanks a lot, Lee.
You bet.
I have two questions, actually, but the first one, I hope it's not too basic. I wondered what kind of percentage of content you can reuse from like one blog to another before Google starts to say, oh, that's the same as that one. And
what percentage of content can you reuse? So like what percentage of the source content? So if I have 100% of my original and I take 70%, or is it okay to use 60%?
Right.
Well, the magic is in what is the other 40%.
Okay.
You know? So I think I would focus on that. It's even okay to republish as is. That's okay, but link back to the original. I mean, if you want to maintain the SEO value of the original,
right,
and yet there's a distribution opportunity like contributing to business to community or something like that, that's great. Just make sure it links back to the original, and your original will maintain its SEO value, and the duplicate may or may not have SEO value, but it will get the distribution value you were looking for, if that makes sense.
Okay, so you encourage people to do that regularly?
Yeah, just link back.
Yeah.
Alternatively then, though, when I read the repurposed version, it's not a percentage answer, I'm sorry, but when I read the repurposed version, do I feel like this is customized to a different audience?
Okay, all right. So that would be the key thing, is the audience for that particular
Absolutely.
outlet. Okay.
Absolutely.
And my second question is, can I come up and get a picture after everyone's
Of course.
done?
Any other questions? We have
Yes.
all right.
I have 2 questions. I just read right here.
2 for 1?
2 questions. Okay, the first one is, could you provide with an example of a successful marketing campaign that portrays each strategy and related to successful companies?
I didn't hear the last part. So an example of a successful campaign that?
Related to successful companies?
That related to successful companies?
Yes.
Well, yeah, there's a really good one. We, along with an agency called Scorch, helped LinkedIn Marketing Solutions create the Sophisticated Marketer's Guide to Marketing on LinkedIn. And if that's what you mean, successful, everyone knows what LinkedIn is. They think of it as a job site and resume and candidates and all that, but it's actually a formidable marketing resource. And so industry influencers and internal subject matter experts were used to create an ebook, and that ebook was repurposed and deconstructed into a wide variety of formats, everything from a print version to infographics, multiple languages, articles, blog posts, all kinds of things like that. And that actually, the last number I got from Jason Miller, who was the brainchild of that particular thing, was 21,000% ROI on that particular program. In fact, they did a version 2, edition 2, and they continue to run ads against those assets, the variety of repurposed assets, because it's so effective. I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but that's an example in my mind of a successful company using repurposing. In this way.
And I have another question. Let me put this little down. You mentioned 2 ways of attracting customers. One is using a successful something from the past recipe and repackage it, and another one is creating something completely new.
You're saying you want examples of that?
Yeah, you mentioned 2 ways. Can you explain a little bit more about this, about if it's how can we attract customers using like an old recipe or create something new?
Well, that's what the presentation is about, essentially, in that once you understand what it is how your customers think of your product or service, right? Whatever it is that you're selling, what is it that's the trigger for them relevant to your product or service? And then you've got to start the idea of creating and curating content around answering those questions, right? So that's where repurposing comes into play, where you're already creating original content. We just want to make sure we're getting more mileage out of it in a personalized way for differences in our customers. Some customers might buy for value, for low cost. Some customers might buy for great service. Some customers might buy for certain functionality or because of something happened in their life that caused them to need what you sell or whatever. Once you answer those questions, you can create a source piece of content, and then you can repurpose or customize it for each one of those different applications, each one of those different situations. Right? That's how you would attract those customers by publishing that content out on the web, by working with influencers to get exposure into their community, by running ads on your content to get exposure, optimizing for keywords so people can find you through organic search, social network participation, where you can, be useful to people on the social web, and by being useful, they are led to your content and where they're persuaded to maybe buy from you. So that's pretty much all in here, but if you're thinking of something else, come up to me and ask afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I think that's it. All right. Well, thank you very much.